If you see someone take something that doesn't belong to them, your immediate response is likely a simple, definitive statement. Stealing is morally wrong. We utter this with the same grammatical certainty as the sky is blue or lead is heavy. Our everyday language implies that moral wrongness is a concrete, objective feature of the universe. But when philosophers attempt to define what it actually means for a moral fact to exist, a position known as moral realism, the consensus shatters. The debate over what counts as real has become so fragmented that philosopher Crispin Wright noted that declaring yourself a moral realist today accomplishes little more than clearing your throat. Making sense of this landscape requires a distinction between minimal moral realism, the baseline belief that moral facts exist, and robust moral realism, which claims those facts exist independent of human minds. Moral anti-realism functions as a disjunction of three mutually exclusive negative theses. Navigating modern ethics involves mapping the specific logical gates where a moral statement fails to qualify as an objective feature of reality. We can map these positions using a decision tree, placing our baseline proposition, stealing is morally wrong, at the top node. The first logical gate asks a foundational question. Are we making an assertion that aims at the truth? Answering no routes the proposition to moral non-cognitivism. Here, moral claims are expressions of emotional disapproval or veiled commands. Philosopher A.J. Ayer argued that the proposition stealing is morally wrong translates simply to stealing, uttered with a disapproving tone. This approach accounts for how moral judgments motivate human behavior. If a moral claim is an expression of a negative emotion, it drives us to act without requiring objective external properties to exist. Non-cognitivism faces a structural challenge known as the Frege-Geach problem. This is a logical objection showing that emotional expressions cannot be easily used in standard logical arguments. If stealing is wrong lacks a truth value, it cannot function as a premise in a complex conditional, such as, if stealing is wrong, then encouraging your brother to steal is wrong. Logic requires truth-preserving relations, which emotional expressions do not provide. Non-cognitivism avoids ontological baggage by removing the moral predicate, but this requires an overhaul of how human language naturally functions. Returning to the first gate, if we assume moral statements are truth-evaluable assertions, moving down the yes path, a stance known as cognitivism, we arrive at the second node. Do these assertions succeed in securing the truth? If moral assertions systematically fail to match reality, we reach moral error theory. Unlike the non-cognitivist, the error theorist believes we attempt to state objective facts when we talk about morality. They argue we are simply always wrong. This is similar to how an atheist views religious claims. A concept can have a clear meaning while entirely lacking instantiation in the real world. Consider two false statements. Asserting my dog is a reptile is false because the property of being a reptile exists, but is misapplied. But asserting my dog is a unicorn is untrue because the property of being a unicorn is not instantiated in reality. Philosopher John Mackey supported this position with his argument from queerness, which claims moral properties are too strange to exist in a natural world. Mackey's conceptual step suggests that morality, by definition, implies objective, non-instrumental reasons to act, a quality he called to-be-pursuedness. His ontological step examines the natural world, noting that it contains atoms and biological drives, but lacks inherently action-guiding properties written into the fabric of the universe. Error theory concludes that our moral framework is a systematic fiction. We speak in terms of authoritative rules, but the universe provides no such foundation. Returning to the second gate, if we take the yes path, known as success theory, we confirm that moral facts do exist, arriving at the final gate. Are these moral facts mind-independent? If the existence of a moral fact depends on mental activity, we reach moral non-objectivism. Non-objectivists qualify as minimal realists because they accept moral truths. They reject the robust realist claim that these truths exist independently of us. A diamond illustrates the distinction between mind-independent and mind-dependent facts. That this diamond is composed of carbon is an objective, mind-independent fact. That the diamond is worth $1,000 is a non-objective, mind-dependent fact. The price relies on human institutions and agreements. This mind dependence exists on a spectrum, ranging from the desires of individuals to the theoretical agreements of idealized agents. This raises the question of whose minds determine these facts. Ideal observer theory posits that moral facts are determined by how a perfectly rational and impartial observer would react. This creates a tension. A law determined by a perfectly rational ideal observer may lack practical motivation for actual humans. However, relying on the desires of actual people can eliminate the possibility of moral progress, as all views become equally valid relative to their holders. Non-objectivism treats morality as a human construct, like economic value. This provides a naturalistic basis for ethics, but it requires us to reconsider the universal authority we often associate with moral rules. We can now zoom out to review these three anti-realist paths alongside robust realism. Moral realism aligns with common sense and the everyday surface grammar of our language. Realism faces challenges regarding how moral properties are constituted and how we access them. Anti-realist theories often prioritize ontological parsimony, the preference for simpler explanations with fewer entities. Evolutionary debunking arguments suggest that humans evolved to perceive morality as an objective law to aid social cooperation, which explains our realist intuitions even if moral facts are mind-dependent. The central debate in metaethics involves deciding whether the intuitive pull of realism can be reconciled with the explanatory models of anti-realist theories. Anti-realism is often conflated with moral skepticism or nihilism in popular discussion. This Venn diagram shows that these terms are distinct. One can hold an anti-realist position, such as non-objectivism, while still defending the existence of moral knowledge and moral progress. Anti-realism establishes a taxonomy of negative structural constraints on reality. Because of this nuance, debating whether a philosopher is or is not a moral realist has often become an exercise in taxonomic bickering. Moving past the realist label requires the work of defining how our values actually relate to the mind, language, and the natural world.